People are now arriving for evening prayers at the London Mosque near Wimbledon, and this is very unusual for a mosque because there is a high level of security all around. Here at the gate, at the entrance, there's an airport-style security. As they go in, people are frisked, they go through a body scanner, they have to give up their mobile phones, and then they're allowed into the mosque itself. And why that happens is because this community feel that they are under threat from other Muslims in the UK. The Ahmadis, whose motto is peace and tolerance, were the first Muslims to build a mosque in London back in the 1920s. They follow a leader called Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, who claimed to be the Messiah foretold by the Prophet Muhammad. For mainstream Muslims, this amounts to heresy, and in Pakistan, the Ahmadis have always been outlawed and even persecuted. Last year, along the main streets of Lahore, there were banners seeking the death of Qadianis, a derogatory term for members of the Ahmadiyya sect. And on May the 28th, that threat became reality.
The door of the main hall was open and we saw the guy with the gun and hand grenades on his jackets, and he was showering bullets on the people who were all inside. Many people got shot. There was a guy sitting just in front of me wearing all white clothes. I cannot forget him for the whole of my life. All of a sudden he started getting red and there was all bullets around by that time.
Luftur Rahman was attending prayers in a mosque on the last day of a business trip to Lahore.
I was sitting next to a pillar. I think that pillar gave me some cover. The attackers broke the window panels, threw some bullets on it, and they started throwing hand grenades inside. And on that side, there were mostly the elderly people who cannot walk properly, or they were sitting in the chair for the prayers. There were many people who died at that time, and many bodies were lying down. Many people were injured, all around blood and marks of bullets. It's difficult to express.
94 people were killed in attacks that day on 2 Ahmadi mosques in Lahore, and a group called the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP, claimed responsibility. In the same month, a British-based satellite TV station, the Ummah channel, broadcast a series of programmes where guest scholars, speaking live on air, abused the Ahmadis' founder as a kafir, an apostate liable to be killed. The Ahmadis were described as filth, who will try to convert the land of purity into the land of filth. After complaints, Ofcom investigated and decided that although the comments fell short of incitement to commit a crime, taken together, they amounted to abusive treatment of the religious views and beliefs of the Ahmadiyya community. The Ummah channel issued an unreserved apology. Luftur Rahman returned to Britain unhurt, but he felt the climate of opinion had changed.
My family was in here in UK. I have a 3-year-old son, my wife. They were all worried about me. I used to go regularly for business purposes, but now they don't allow me and I can't go back.
But do you feel safe here, at least in the UK?
I used to feel safe because I'm living here for quite a while, but now the same kind of thing is started appearing in here, what was started in Pakistan early years ago. And the same kind of hatred that is being imported to UK as well, and unfortunately from the Pakistan.
After the Lahore massacre, the international campaign group Human Rights Watch called on the Pakistan government to take immediate legal action against Islamist extremist groups responsible for threats and violence against the Ahmadiyya religious community. It said they'd been emboldened by government inaction.
The organizations that basically spearhead this kind of behavior are organizations such as the Khatm-e-Nabuwat. They are ideological bedfellows, if you will, with people who have gone on to be part of a series of militant groups in Pakistan. Their long-term objective is essentially to make Pakistan a theocratic state. It is to propagate a certain medieval view of Islam and what Islamic societies ought to be.
Ali Dayan Hassan is the South Asia researcher for Human Rights Watch. His investigation shows that the umbrella group Khatm-e-Nabuwat, or Finality of the Prophet, is active here in Britain. Its affiliates include a headquarters in Newham and an academy in South London on the doorstep of the Ahmadiyya community.
Khatme Nabuwat is an international organization, and it certainly has a presence in the United Kingdom. Of that, there is little doubt. What these groups do is that they engage in ongoing social coercion, in brainwashing, in inciting hatred. So the issue is what the impact of this kind of dissemination of ideologies by the Khatme Nabuwat within the Muslim community in Britain will do for vulnerable groups within the Muslims of Britain.
London Ahmadis saw Khatme Nabuwat in operation last year. This is a typically multicultural part of South London where every race and creed seems to live happily side by side. But that harmony was disrupted last summer when notices began to appear in shops like this one. This is a hair and cosmetics shop, and on the window there's a sign which says "Deception of the Qadiani." Now, that's a word that the Ahmadiyya community believe is derogatory, and it applies to them. And this notice says that the Ahmadiyya are non-Muslims and that they follow a man who is a blasphemer against Allah. That's highly explosive, and the Ahmadiyya believe it's the beginning of a campaign of hatred. Inside the shop, a tall bearded man in shalwar kameez sits at the counter. Why have you put that poster up in your window?
It's a public information to let the Muslim community in here know the Ahmadiyya, they call them Muslim themselves, has been declared non-Muslim.
Do you know of the group Khatme Nabuwat?
Yeah, he knows.
And they are active in this area?
Yeah, they do come and let the people know about the Qadianis and everything. Yeah, they do come around.
And what do they say?
They're telling people they're Qadianis, they are non-Muslim, what they believe, and this and that. They're telling people Muslim, but they are not basically.
The same message that was written on that poster, that Ahmadis are deceivers who should be shunned, was relayed in stronger language to a large audience of Muslims at a conference organised by the Khatme Nabuwat Academy at the Tooting Islamic Centre.
I explain and request all of us to refrain from Qadiani.
Extracts from the conference are captured on YouTube. The preacher, a cleric called Maulana Sohail Bawa, is telling his audience to keep themselves away from Ahmadis and boycott their products. Don't be friends with the Qadianis, he says. They are trying to deceive you and convert you from Islam to disbelief. For one butcher in Tooting who doesn't want to be named, the preacher's message had an immediate effect. He was sacked by the employer he'd worked for since 2007.
Over a cup of tea, he basically said, you need to think and reassess your position, join us and become a Muslim. Basically, the owner said to me, my position is very precarious. I can't now employ you anymore. You need to leave the job. Because I've been told at the conference that anybody who employs an Ahmadi, he will have a sticker or a poster put on his shop saying, this person employs Ahmadis, and that won't be tolerated by the community in Tooting.
The butcher took his case to an employment tribunal, who agreed that he'd been unfairly dismissed because of his religion.
We find that the reason for the dismissal was that the claimant is an Ahmadiyya Muslim and that he would not convert to being a Sunni Muslim as a condition of his continued employment.
The president of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Association in London, Nasser Deen, thinks that what Khatme Nabuwat is doing is creating a climate of animosity that could inspire some hothead to commit an act of violence.
One does not want to have the freedom of speech curtailed in any way, but what I feel and what and the members of our community feel, that we are tolerating an intolerance and that we need to be intolerant of intolerance. And I think generally our society is moving to a political correctness rather than looking at the bigger picture and what's happening.
But this, of course, is a difference of religion and interpretation. To call on the boycotting of a group doesn't amount to racial or religious hatred exactly, does it?
If tomorrow somebody was inciting boycott Jews, don't go near them, and have a social boycott, you can imagine how we all would feel and how the press would react. Here, what we've got as being Muslims is happening, and it seems to be that the views are very different, whereas actually it's the same. And it's only a matter of time, I believe, before an outrage is committed here in the United Kingdom against our community.
Akber Choudhry is a convert from the Ahmadiyya faith who agreed to speak to File on 4 on behalf of Khatme Nabuwat. He says the speech made by their cleric at the Tooting Islamic Centre was an attempt to counter proselytising messages put out by the Ahmadis.
The words were unfortunate, and they did not comply with the guidelines of the Tooting Islamic Centre where this speech was held. I don't believe they are incitement. If you look into their proper context and where they come from, they are meant not to isolate or not to ostracize, but to protect the Muslim community from the propaganda of a very strong organization that thrives on that kind of propaganda.
To say don't have anything to do with the Ahmadis, boycott the Ahmadis, what is that if not to ostracize the Ahmadis?
Ahmadis are already socially ostracized. They don't come to Muslim mosques. They have no social interaction with the Muslim community at all. So the ostracization, if any, is from the Ahmadiyya side.
Although Ahmadis have complained to police about Khatmi Nabuwat's activities, they've been told that no laws have been broken. In a country that prides itself on free speech, people can be as abusive as they like so long as they don't incite crimes of hatred. But a climate of growing intolerance is something we should all worry about, according to Ali Dayan Hassan of Human Rights Watch.
It is very explosive, you see, because first you establish a theological framework where apostasy or blasphemy is punishable by death. Then you say that these people are apostates. You say these people are blasphemers. Then by implication, what you're saying is that, well, these people are fit to be killed. I think that the British government ought to concern itself with this matter perhaps a little more. I say this very cautiously because we certainly do not want the state playing Big Brother at all. But the British government should be carefully looking at how these groups operate and how they operate within Muslim communities.
Speaking for the Khatmi Nabuwat Academy, Akber Choudhry says the intention of their messages is to inform Muslims. Language is a sensitive issue, and to be called a non-Muslim, to be called a deceiver, isn't there a danger that one individual could pick this up and use that as an excuse to commit an act of violence?
A single individual can do whatever they want. And in fact, the Khatmi Nabuwat is absolutely scared that a lone person may do something against the Ahmadiyyas. And in this current charged climate, they're going to come and tell the media to blame us. There is, unfortunately, in translation, things do get lost. And
the term non-Muslim is pretty clear, isn't it? It's pretty clear in language. That's not a mistranslation.
No, that they are not Muslims is the unanimous opinion of Muslims around the world.
But as you say, it's a very sensitive thing. It is extremely explosive to use that term, because when it is used, it is often associated with being an apostate, an infidel, and fatwas are made because of this.
Yeah, but you have to put the words in context. I'm sure there are Muslims who have left Islam in the UK in the past. They have not had fatwas issued against them. They have not been killed. We should understand things that in a Muslim majority country like Iran or Saudi Arabia or Pakistan, things are different. And I doubt very, very much that anybody would issue a fatwa here saying that a non-Muslim should be killed. If I were to say to somebody that based on this belief, or you may not be a Muslim, is that incitement? How far do you want to stretch this,
Last autumn, members of Parliament held a debate on the plight of the Ahmadis in Pakistan and raised concerns about recent events in South London. And the Parliamentary Human Rights Group went on a fact-finding mission to Pakistan, paid for by the Ahmadiyya community. Introducing their report, Lord Avebury, the group's vice-chair, wrote that in the UK, extremists were inciting hatred against Ahmadis, and events in Pakistan should serve as a wake-up call to those who defend religious freedom and tolerance.
I think we need a complete review of the hate laws. I mean, in 2006, Parliament passed legislation outlawing religious and racial hatred, and that's now part of the Public Order Act. But it's proved to be ineffective because there's been only one prosecution, and that failed. If you look at the attacks on television channels, you look at things that are said in rallies, which you would say would constitute incitement, the Crown Prosecution Service don't find that the law gives them the power to bring these people to court. So therefore the law is inadequate, because certainly the things that are said are very extreme.
So what do you think is the weakness of the legislation?
I think probably it's because the prosecution needs to prove two things. First of all, that the words used do constitute incitement to religious hatred, and secondly, that the person using these words intended them to incite to religious hatred. And it's very difficult to prove something that goes on in a person's mind as being part of the offence.
For those brought up in a secular society, it may be hard to understand the depth of emotion caused by words such as non-Muslim or infidel. But although Maha Azam, a fellow at Chatham House and an advisor on political Islam, says this type of language causes deep hurt, she doesn't believe that's an argument for censorship.
If someone questions core aspects of belief between different religions or within a religion, theological debates ensue and sentiments run high. The issue here is that in a country like Britain, where the Muslim community feels it's defending its position over a number of issues, political, those to do with identity, then issues to do with core aspects of belief, the whole situation and the tensions become heightened.
And is there a danger that then it becomes more than just a theological argument and perhaps heated rhetoric and spills over into violence?
Of course, there is that danger. So checks have to be placed very early on against the resort to violence. But we have to be able to distinguish between community leaders educating their community as to what they believe Islam is about, and to distinguish between that and incitement to violence.
For its part, the Home Office tells us in a statement,
the government is committed to ensuring that everyone has the freedom to live their lives free from fear of targeted hostility or harassment on the grounds of a particular characteristic. We're fully aware that this type of crime is underreported, which is why we're working with police and the Crown Prosecution Service towards improving the recording of hate crime offences.
Many politicians and members of the public defend freedom of speech as almost sacrosanct. And you only have to look at Pakistan's blasphemy laws to see the perils of curtailing that freedom. Freedom.